There's the moon, right? It's sort of a crescent moon, right? And you can't see it, but it's a little star like right there. I'm up early, not as early as normally, but I'm here, and that's what matters, right? You know, we do the best we can in life, right? No matter what we're doing, right? Sometimes life hands us poop. But man, that's so true, right? Barely getting the sleep out of my eyes and up and at 'em, right? Up and at 'em, man. Sometimes no matter how hard you try in life, life just hands you a big bag of poop, right? What do you do? What do you do, man? You know, for me, I was just doggedly stubborn, right? And just kept going on the same path, right? You know, I didn't have a backup plan in life, and I don't recommend anybody out there go through life like that, because that was a tough thing to do, man. It got me thinking. There was an episode of the Little Rascals. If people watch that, I don't even know if you could still find it. Maybe it's on YouTube, right? But Alfalfa, right, had decided that he was a serious singer, right? And he was only going to sing opera, right? But people wanted to hear him croon, right? He was in the era of the crooner, right? When the Little Rascals came out, you know, like the Frank Sinatras and stuff like that. But he decided he was too good for that. He was going to be a crooner, right? And so this guy makes him make a deal. He makes a deal with the devil, right? It's not, you know, shown as the devil, but it's this shady showbiz guy. And he says, "Oh yeah, you'll be an opera singer. Yes, sign with me. I'll make you an opera singer." And he goes out there to sing his opera. And he's, "I'm the barber of Seville." And people boo, right? People don't like it, right? And he's laughed at and he's mocked, right? And guess what? Because he signed that deal, right? Because he signed that deal, he has to continue doing it, right? It's like he made a deal with the devil, right? And, you know, he has to keep on that path. And, you know, that's a lesson there. You know, watch that as a little kid. I watched that as a little kid, and it maybe didn't dawn on me that, you know, in the episode, right? He's, you know, forced to sing opera, right? When crooning was the thing that people wanted to hear him do. But you know what? There's a lot you can learn from that, right? Because look at all these old stars that are still out there doing it, right? And you got a lot of people even in the comment sections of YouTube and stuff saying, "Oh my God, that sucks. He needs to hang it up," and boo, boo. You know, essentially the boos aren't coming from them performing live, but they're coming on social media. I have a friend that's, you know, a professional guitar player, and he's out there with a well-known singer, right, who used to be part of a duo. And, you know, the guy is out there on tour, and the reviews are starting to get bad, right? This guy was one of the best singers of all time, right? And now the reviews are bad, right? Because he's old, right? You can't hit the note. You can't hit the high notes. Here's a lesson for all you young cats out there, right? What you create when you're young you're going to have to replicate and do over and over and over again. So if you set the bar high, right? If you set the bar high and, have to hit all these high notes and sing these hard songs and all this stuff, you're going to have to try to do that when you're old and past your expiration date, right? And so my friend is out there, and then I'm seeing YouTubers that I watch, seeing them rag on the artist and saying, reviews are in and it's not good and all of this. And I can only imagine, being out there, right? And you look, a gig is a gig, right? A gig is a gig. And everybody needs cash, right? No matter how big you are, if you're not out there playing gigs, right? The cash is not coming in, right? You're always going to need cash for something, right? And that is the tough thing, man, because you made this deal with fame, right? You made this deal with the music business, and you set a very high standard for yourself. You wanted to be a professional singer, right? And now what has happened is you're out there on the trail at a very late age, right? And now the boos are raining down. Now people are seeing you at your weakest point, right? And you can go back to talking about Elvis, right? And everybody saw him at his weakest point, and they saw him out of shape and all this. But he still had his voice, right? He could still sing. But Elvis died at a young age. Elvis died in his 40s, right? What was he? 43 or something like that? He died way too young, man. If the guy had been, sent to rehab and cleaned up, and they got him working out and got him a trainer and all that kind of stuff, man, he could have kept going, right? He could have kept going if he'd have gotten off those, the things that kept him going, right? When everybody is depending on you, right, to pay bills, right? Because here's the deal. You make a deal, right, to be in show business, right? And yes, you need cash, but guess what? If you want to keep that band, you're going to have to keep playing gigs. If you want to keep having somebody help you around the house, you got to make cash. If you want to keep the lights on your venue or whatever, you got to keep working, right? And you got to keep working despite the fact that there's a lot of people saying you ain't got it anymore. There's a lot of people saying that you're done. There's a lot of people saying that your career is over, right? And once you cross over that point, right, your voice is not getting any better as you get older, right? There may be a certain point where your voice peaks, right? And if somebody out there who is a vocal expert or knows anything about singing, let me know in the comments when you think someone's voice peaks. I think it's different for different people because of their lifestyle and how well they took care of their voice and all this. You got people like Whitney Houston, who had one of the greatest voices of all time, right? But she destroyed her body, and she essentially, towards the end of her life, lost her ability to sing at the level that she had created as a youth, right? And the thing is, she still needed money, right? So what did they do? They sent her over to sing in Malaysia. They sent her over to do concerts in all these out of the way places, thinking that the press would not see it would not get the coverage that if she'd have been performing in the States. And imagine how the press would have eaten her alive if she was touring the States each night and just didn't have it anymore. And they would have eaten her alive, right? But yet she still would have needed money. She still would have had to figure out a way to make income. And for me and a lot of other people out there, singing is the only thing that we have. Playing music is the only thing we have, right? And so you made that deal, right? You were all in. You were all in. Because here's the deal, man. I'm not sure that you can make it to that level. And look, it's extremely hard to make it to that level. But I don't think being half-assed about it, you're going to make it to that level. I don't think if you work, and look, you could let me know in the comments if you know of any people that were working day gigs and doing side hustles and all this kind of stuff and then blew up. Let me know in the comments. It seems that people needed to be all in. I'm sure there's cases of people that, were doing other things and then their career took off. Because look, we've all had to do other stuff, I've worked jobs, whether it was in Los Angeles or my time in Nashville, and even if it was just every now and then someone would say, hey, I need you to go pick up, payment for this and go, drive it over here or whatever. We all have to do that. But if you're doing something like that full time, if you're doing a full-time job, that's a whole different other level of selling to an industry, right? Because many of us that watch this channel, many of you may have worked in factories or may have worked, labor, right? And then it comes a point in your life where you can no longer perform at the same level that you did when you were young. So this is not a unique thing to the music business, but what is unique is the public ridicule and the public scorn, right? Because you are a performer, right? You're expected to perform. You're a bird that's expected to sing, right? And then when you do sing, there may be thousands of people in the audience. But then there may be even more eyes and ears on the internet watching that performance. Hey, I couldn't go to the concert. Look, AC/DC's out there these days. And, somebody in the comments asked, how was the AC/DC concert? I said, well, he sang the first half of the concert really strong. And then, the second half, he sounded like somebody who had been singing, for a long time, but sold the hell out of it. All right. So, that's what you can expect, right? I saw AC/DC back in the Black Train tour or whatever that was. And man, I'm good. I saw Malcolm Young and, what's the drummer's name? Can't think of it, but I saw essentially the original lineup with Brian Johnson on vocals, right? But man, they're still out there doing it. And there's fans that want to go see these artists and hear the songs. And some of the fans realize, hey, this band is old and they're struggling up there, but they just want to hear those songs one last time, right? And that's the deal that you make in life. We all make a deal to do a job, right? We all make a deal to do a job in life, and we all do things to pay the bills. And at one point in life, right, the piper's going to come. And you're still going to have to pay the piper. But maybe you're not old enough to perform the way you did, right? And at some point, it seems like, in the real world where you worked a regular job, at some point, a lot of people get a pension, right? And they're able to stop, or they build up enough Social Security and they stop, and then they collect Social Security, and then that's it. Maybe they do some stuff on the side. Maybe they drive Uber or whatever else for some extra money. But man, being a performer, being out there in the public eye and having everyone see you when you fail, when you can't hit the notes anymore, and you're out there struggling to get through a song and maybe only singing 2 out of every 5 or 6 words, eking out the vocals, right? That's a tough thing, man. I as far as playing music, right? I think it's easier to be a guitar player, be a lead guitar player, and maybe you lose a few steps, right? Maybe you can't, play as fast as you once did, but you could still play, right? You could still play something and make it sound good, right? You can adjust your playing because ultimately, it's the instrument, right? And if you put your fingers in the right place, you're going to play, good notes, right? If you're a singer, man, and that voice is worn out, rode hard, and put up wet, some people experience this at a young age. They just ain't got it anymore. And some, it comes much later in life. But eventually, you're out there like alfalfa. You're having to sing. You're under contract to sing, despite the fact that people are out there going, boo, 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 you suck, right? That is the brutal reality of age in the music business.